The Cleveland Browns are entering what could be one of the most remarkable and unpredictable seasons in recent history. It's not just about recovering from a forgettable 3-game winning streak. It's about surviving a brutal schedule, navigating a quarterback carousel that could derail at any moment, and seeing if a young, inexperienced roster can grow faster than expected. But before we even get to the games, let's talk about what's setting this season apart: uncertainty. Every Browns fan watching this knows the feeling. We've seen quarterback drama, roster turnover, and coaching positions up for grabs before. But this year, there's something different in the air. It's fragile, it's electric, and it could go either way. Let's break it down. But first, make sure to hit the like button if you've been a Browns fan for 16 plus years. It's great to see fans of all ages. There are people here who have been Browns fans for 30 plus years. The utmost respect. Now, I want to ask you something. On a scale of 0 to 10, how would you rate Kevin Stefanski as the Browns head coach? Comment below. Let's start with the schedule. You'd think finishing last in the AFC North would earn the Browns a bit of relief. A softer slate, maybe? Nope, not even close. This schedule is downright cruel. The Browns open the season against 3 playoff teams in the first 4 weeks. That's a gauntlet. And then they take on the Minnesota Vikings in London, a team that was no joke last season, and follow that up with a road game in Pittsburgh. So let's pause and think about this. An international trip, a tough return flight, and then right into the AFC North fire. That's a setup that could leave any team gassed before the season even reaches the halfway point, and fans are already bracing for impact. Some are looking at the list of opponents and saying, 4 wins is realistic, and honestly, they might be right. Others, holding on to hope, are penciling in 6 wins. But even that feels optimistic unless a few things click fast. And if they don't, this team is more likely to be drafting in the top 5 than pushing for a playoff spot. A big part of the equation comes down to what happens with the rookies. The Browns are banking on them, not just to contribute, but to potentially carry this team in key spots. We're talking about major roles for players like Mason Graham, Quinton Judkins, and Carson Swissinger. Graham is expected to be a disruptive force up front. Judkins could rush for 1,000 yards, and Swissinger is drawing attention for his instincts and tackling. But even if all 3 perform at a high level, that doesn't guarantee wins. As someone pointed out, Myles Garrett was phenomenal last year, and they still only won 3 games. Rookies can shine, but football is still a team sport, and these rookies are walking into a battlefield, not a classroom. Then there's the question of points. Who's actually going to score them? Jerry Jeudy has been spotlighted as a key weapon who needs to step up. He finished last season with just 4 touchdowns, 2 of which came in the same game against Denver. That's not good enough. If the Browns are going to punch back this season, Jeudy needs to become a reliable red zone threat, not a once every 5 weeks highlight. And of course, we've got to talk about the quarterback situation again. Could we see Kim Ward versus Shedeur Sanders by week 14? Maybe. It's not impossible, but it's also not likely, at least not based on how the staff seems to be approaching the early stages of this competition. Joe Flacco is still very much in the picture, and his name keeps coming up when discussing week 1. It would take injuries or an implosion for Flacco to lose the job early. But come week 14, who knows? Especially if the season is slipping away and it's time to look to the future. Coaching stability is also hanging in the balance. Kevin Stefanski is entering what might be his most pressure-filled year yet. If the Browns stumble again, if it's another 3 or 4 win disaster, the calls for change will be deafening. But here's the twist. Stefanski might not be the one on the chopping block. Jimmy Haslam could decide that the blame lies more with the quarterback situation than the coaching. After all, it was Haslam who pushed for the Deshaun Watson trade. And if Stefanski is squeezing every drop of potential from a limited roster, firing him could backfire. This is the tightrope Cleveland is walking right now. And one thing's clear, there's no room for error. Every week will feel like a referendum. Every loss will raise questions. Every win will offer a glimpse of what could be. The team needs clarity, leadership, and a few breaks to go their way. And for once, they need a season that feels less like survival and more like a step forward. Now, it's your turn, Browns Nation. Do you think the Browns can exceed expectations this year? Or are we headed for another long, painful rebuild? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I want to hear your predictions, your fears, and who you think needs to step up the most in 2025. The Cleveland Browns might be one of the most complex puzzles in the NFL heading into the 2025 season, and to make matters more dramatic, the future of several key figures in the organization could hinge on how this year unfolds. Kevin Stefanski, in particular, is in an unusual position. After leading this team to the playoffs twice, he's now coaching for his future with a roster full of youth, questions at quarterback, and a schedule that could chew up more established teams. But here's the thing. Despite the pressure, Stefanski may not be on as thin ice as some fans think. Let's talk about ownership. Jimmy Haslam still looms large, and it's important to remember it was his aggressive move that brought Deshaun Watson to Cleveland, costing the team a boatload of draft picks and raising the stakes to almost untenable levels. Now that the Watson era has essentially collapsed under its own weight, does Haslam really want to pull the plug on Stefanski too, essentially admitting back-to-back major failures under his leadership? Possibly. But if the Browns are competitive in most games, even in losses, it's easier to justify keeping Stefanski and trying to finally pair him with the right quarterback in 2026. Especially if that quarterback comes via a top 5 pick, which feels like a real possibility based on this schedule and current roster construction. Now let's rewind a bit to that game against the New York Jets back in Stefanski's first year hosting live watch parties, Week 2. That memory was burned into the minds of many Browns fans. Up 13 points with 2 minutes left, and then the unthinkable happened. Joe Flacco happened. The Browns collapsed, and Stefanski's face was on every post-game reaction across the internet. And while that loss hurt badly, it's a microcosm of what's plagued Cleveland for years. Just when things seem to be turning a corner, something goes sideways. That's the kind of moment that still haunts this fan base. And it's the kind of moment that cannot be repeated in 2025, not if this regime wants to survive. Now, let's shift back to this year's outlook. Week 14 might seem far away, but the way the season is structured, every few games could lead to a complete reevaluation of who's under center. If Joe Flacco starts the year but the team is out of contention by mid-season, the odds of seeing Shedeur Sanders or even Dillon Gabriel go up significantly. That's the natural path of a team looking to 2026. And if by some twist of fate we get Cam Ward versus Shedeur Sanders in December, the Browns will suddenly find themselves at the center of a national storyline, rookie duel, future stakes, evaluation time. But before we even reach that possibility, the Browns have to find ways to put points on the board. Beyond Jerry Jeudy, this team needs anyone, to emerge as a consistent scoring threat. Could that be David Njoku? Maybe. But with 1 year left on his deal, even his long-term presence is in doubt. There's excitement around the rookies, particularly Judkins and Swissinger, but excitement doesn't equal production. At least not yet. And that brings us to the fans, the lifeblood of this team. Those of you buying the jerseys, watching the preseason snaps like it's the Super Bowl, debating depth charts on message boards and Reddit threads, you are the pulse of the Cleveland Browns. And right now, your patience is being tested again. The energy in the fan base is a mix of cautious optimism and hardened realism. You've seen this story before. You want it to end differently this time. So, where does that leave us? With a roster that could either surprise everyone or go into full reset mode. With a head coach whose future might depend more on how he loses than how many times he loses. With a quarterback competition that could swing wildly every few weeks. And with a front office trying to thread the needle between rebuilding and staying relevant in a stacked AFC North. This season isn't going to be easy, but it will be telling. Every decision, every snap, every press conference, it's all part of a much larger equation. And when the dust settles, the Browns could either be a team on the rise or back at square one with another top 5 pick and more questions than answers. But for now, all we can do is watch, analyze, and support. Because if there's one thing Browns fans know how to do, it's endure. And maybe, just maybe, this year's pain becomes next year's progress. Now it's your turn, again. If you made it this far, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel for full season coverage, and let us know in the comments, what's your honest expectation for the Browns this year? Are we looking at a 6-win step forward, or a 3-win collapse that resets everything? Your voice matters. Let's talk about it.